Hi everyone, welcome to the Movieception Show. My name is Fariba, and today I'm going to be doing something of a very special Star Wars video for my channel. This is very unprecedented in just about anything I've ever done. If you've actually been following my channel, you would know that I've done quite a lot of reaction videos for trailers and, TV episodes, and of course movie reviews here and there, but rarely do I ever take the time to really do like a breakdown video or doing a revisit of an episode of some sort. I mean, this is very uncharted territories for me, but there's a reason why I am doing this video, and that is because, of course, Ahsoka episode 5 came out 4 or 5 days ago, and I mean, to this day, all I'm ever thinking about is just the sequences from that first 20 to 30 minutes of that episode, and just the way that it really rejuvenated my interest in Star Wars. Like, I feel like I had to really just express all my emotions about it, and I feel like just the reaction video I did on that night is just not enough. And so for this video, I thought, let's do a second take on episode 5, doing more so not just like reaction. I'm not gonna do like a face reaction just because I think that has already been put up. There's no way of replicating all my emotions of that episode on the first watch. There is a reason why you watch everything the first time around. Like, you just cannot relive those moments. And so I thought, okay, well, let's just keep this on a video level where, we can break down the episode alone. And, hopefully, I hope that we'll be able to meet up the expectations for fair use. But I thought, let's rewatch the episode, break down some of the sequences, such as whether it be like giving my opinions about the performances, the sequences, the visuals, just either like giving another view on the actual, execution of the sequences that we've seen between Ahsoka and Anakin, as well as like other things, right? Like I since the episode has dropped, I've been digging really deep into the Star Wars lore. I've been reading theories, I've been reading people's comments, opinions, and so in general, one of the main purposes of this video is to not really just react to the actual episode, because that's already been done. My reaction video is up there. I'll drop it down below if you haven't already seen it. There are some really sweet moments there that I personally just did not think I would have caught in the moment, but I did. So I'll drop it down below, and I'll probably reference it a little bit here and there, especially if it has any importance for any scenes that we stop on. But really, what I want to do with this video is to just take another turn on the video, do another rewatch, just to kind of talk about some of the biggest moments, what people have been saying, what are my opinions about it now. I've really kind of digested everything since. Like, I've, again, even after 4 or 5 days, I'm still watching clips from the episode. Like, I cannot even express how much I love this episode. And that's why I wanted to make this video, just so we can do another take on it, discuss more about it, break down what has, happened so far since that episode, right? And I feel like this would be a really good chance to kind of do a second take on it. So that's why I'm doing this episode right here, just to again do another take on it. And and again, before I even go on to this, right, before we start diving back into what is Ahsoka episode 5, I do want to talk about my story as well, why this is, for me, it feels really close to my heart, why this is a really emotional moment for me, why I'm going to the extent of not just doing reactions, but also doing a second take on an episode like Ahsoka episode 5, which I've never done ever in, on this channel. And that is because I do have quite some memories in terms of how I got into Star Wars. And of course, that, just the actual timeline of it takes place like just relatively after Revenge of the Sith, and I in between Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars. So I just want to, briefly jump into that just a little bit, just, give my side of my Star Wars story. And so, yeah. For me, it's a very unusual case of how I got into Star Wars, because it's not as if somebody was able to influence me in any way of really just discovering Star Wars. At least for my parents, because I know when it comes to a lot of people's stories, like I've had a lot of friends who have followed Star Wars, and a lot of them have, attributed that their passion for Star Wars, stems from their parents' love for Star Wars, right? I mean, they lived through it. They lived through the times where, Star Wars was just its genesis, back in the 70s and 80s. So, but that story is not something that I myself have, because it's not how it is. My parents, neither of them were really Star Wars fans. Because the thing is, for one thing, they're both from the country of Bangladesh. So of course for them, a lot of what they watched was basically Bollywood, more so than anything really Hollywood. Now, that's not to say that my parents have never seen a Hollywood movie. They definitely have. Like, there would be times where I'll probably watch something and my parents may recognize the movie, especially if it's like something from like the 80s, 70s or 80s. They'll probably be able to recognize or identify what movie it is, or the actors in it as well. Like, I mean, my mom knows who Nicole Kidman is, so they are very aware of Hollywood. They have seen the movies, they know the pop culture, but they were never really, deep into Star Wars, especially not my dad. Like, my dad, he's someone who has, definitely has some of his fan moments in his life. Like, he is a big fan of, Clint Eastwood, Sylvester Stallone. He's watched the Mad Max series. He's watched Indiana Jones series. Like, he has those moments, of course. But I guess he just never really got into Star Wars. Probably, it's just something, it just wasn't something that really interested him. So, of course, for me, like, I don't have that story that a lot of people have when it comes to being introduced to Star Wars, because my parents didn't, neither of them were really big fans of it. Now, how did I actually get into Star Wars is going to be the big question, of course, and that is a very unique experience, I guess you can say, because the way I got into Star Wars was really because of my sister. So I want to say this was right around the time after Revenge of the Sith, but right before the Clone Wars had came out. The reason why I recall this, because I just remember there were a lot of ads playing. I believe it was on Cartoon Network at the time that the Clone Wars was premiering. And so that's really how I'm able to kind of remember sort of the whole, I guess, the images and just the moments of where everything kind of started to happen. I mean, there are some blurry memories, but that's where I'm vividly able to pinpoint or at least mark as the start of my Star Wars journey. So yeah, this was around the time when, Revenge of the Sith had already been out, but Clone Wars was just about to become this really big show. Like, at that time, I don't think anyone knew how big the show was going to be. But my sister, on one hand, like, it was like the one thing that she was really, really looking forward to, because it was about expanding the Star Wars lore. It was happening, like, I mean, in terms of the timeline, it's happening between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. And for my sister, like, I can't really exactly say for sure how she got into Star Wars, but all I can say is that once she did get introduced, like, I would say maybe there was a friend, or maybe because of the Clone Wars, that she really kind of started to get really deep into Star Wars, that, it just became her biggest passion. She became such a huge fan of it that at one point she decided, you know what, I want to share my love for Star Wars with my sister, which would be, of course, me. So I just remember one day she decided to kind of show me some clips from, the prequel trilogies. I don't think she really went too deep into the original trilogy, at least not yet. But I just remember she was really kind of focused on the prequel trilogies, and she just would just show me clip after clip. But the one thing that really stood out is the fact that, there was one character that she absolutely was in love with. Like, you can tell it was basically her favorite character, and that it was Anakin Skywalker. Like, I swear, when that's the one thing that I remember very vividly, that my sister had like a nonstop crush on Anakin Skywalker. She loved him so much. Like, that's one of the reasons why she just wanted to introduce the character to me, just so that she can really kind of express her, you know, passion, her love for this character, which makes sense. I mean, this is a very important character. He's been a big part of the Star Wars universe, and of course, around that time, you know, they were really focusing on the prequel trilogy, Anakin Skywalker, his origin story, and my sister just was really, you know, just obsessed about the whole idea of Anakin Skywalker. Like, she just would just show me nonstop clips about him, and an extension, you know, it became a point where she also liked Hayden Christensen. Like, she loved both Anakin and Hayden Christensen. Like, there was even one tribute video of like Anakin Skywalker that was like roaming around the internet. It was like one of those, like, you know, fan edits that people, you know, create, where they just, you know, add in a music and rearrange some clips to kind of match the music. And I think it was a very good video. I have to see if I can find that, or if that's been taken down, because it's been it's been about 17 years since, you know, and by that point YouTube was still, you know, just becoming the thing, right? It just became, you know, it just happened during its inception. So, but with my sister, of course, like, she absolutely loved Anakin Skywalker. She loved Hayden Christensen. She's definitely one of those people who, you know, you will definitely know for sure was a huge defender of Hayden Christensen, which we'll talk about as we start getting into the video. But she absolutely loved Hayden. She loved the character so much. And yeah, and ever since then, right, for me, I started to also follow up on Star Wars. And initially in a more casual way. Like, I wasn't as, you know, deep into the universe as my sister was, or any other fan was. I mean, for me, like, I didn't really start getting into Star Wars in a much more deeper way until, like, I would say, like, just relatively before The Force Awakens. But and of course, since then, like, I've now become a huge fan. I've been following up on the lore. I've been caught up on, you know, the canon stuff, the legends, all that sort of stuff. I'm still trying to catch up on other things, of course. Like that's not to say that I'm an expert at Star Wars. I will definitely not say that. I cannot claim that at all. I'm like, I mean, in one case, I am definitely far more of a Star Wars fan than a casual Star Wars viewer. Like, I've been pretty much been spot on keeping, you know, tabs on Star Wars. I've been catching up on the shows, the movies, the things that developed, the news that come out of it. Like, I've definitely been following it more than what a casual person would do in terms of, you know, following Star Wars. But I'm definitely not like an expert where it's like I definitely know everything, right? I know the whole lore. I know the rules, the laws, the policy. I don't know them by heart, of course. So I do want to, like, clarify that I'm not, you know, such a big expert at it. Now, that's not to say that I don't know things. I definitely do know things. I do acknowledge a lot of the things that happen in Star Wars. I do have some idea of what's going on. There are definitely things that, you know, I would say that I would be able to pinpoint. But again, I'm just trying to pinpoint that I'm not, you know, an expert in Star Wars where I can literally, like, break down everything one by one, or be able to spot, like, you know, the Easter eggs or anything like that. Like, that takes me a bit more time. But that's just giving an idea of how I am as a Star Wars viewer, someone who has been following Star Wars for quite some time. I mean, for me, I've been, you know, dedicated to Star Wars for like quite some time now. I guess you can say relatively over a decade. And again, even though I was far more of a casual viewer in the beginning, that is not to say that I've not watched Star Wars at all. I've definitely have been watching it for a relatively long time as a result of my sister, because again, she loved it. I ended up loving it as well. And even, and not just that, but I also started to like Anakin Skywalker too. I liked Anakin Skywalker. I liked Hayden Christensen as an actor. I've actually watched a lot of Christensen's work beyond Star Wars, like, as I was getting more and more into, you know, kind of this whole phase of getting into movies, where I started to realize my passion for films. And that also meant, you know, really kind of discovering some movies that I usually wouldn't have watched if I was just, you know, more of a casual review, like, you know, a casual moviegoer, movie watcher. And so in that case, like, I have seen a lot of Christensen's work beyond Star Wars. So I've seen movies like, what was it, Takers and Jumper, for instance. So I'm very aware of Hayden Christensen's works for quite some time. And so in terms of the backlash of Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker, that was something I was not very aware of back then. And I think it's just because at the time, because internet wasn't as vast, it wasn't as universally used, it wasn't, you know, kind of the main, you know, medium that everyone was using. Like, I think internet was still kind of relatively kind of trying to figure things out, that, you know, I wasn't aware of the backlash. I wasn't aware of, you know, people's criticism towards Christensen for his portrayal of Anakin Skywalker. I didn't know about this until probably in the last, I would say maybe just around the time when, you know, I wouldn't say Force Awakens or The Last Jedi had came out. That's when I started to learn more about sort of the perception coming from the Star Wars community and how they reacted to Christensen's performance as Anakin Skywalker, which really shocked me. I didn't know about this. And so now that I've actually had this, you know, knowledge, this idea of how things have been for the Star Wars universe, because of course a lot of people talk about the toxicity, people talk about the criticism, people have a lot of things to address when it comes to Star Wars, because it's really tough to, you know, to make everyone happy, to appease every party as much as possible. But it's been very interesting seeing this journey for Christensen, because given the fact that, again, that there used to be this backlash towards him for quite some time, something that, again, I wasn't aware of till much later. And again, and a lot of that's just because my sister and we both liked, you know, Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. That's how we got introduced into, you know, Star Wars, because of characters like, you know, Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan Kenobi, Natalie Portman's Padme Amidala, or again, Hayden Christensen as Anakin Skywalker. That was something that we grew up with. That's how we got into Star Wars. So of course, like, we never, you know, had any backlash towards Anakin. Now, that's not to say that Anakin has some issues personality wise, of course. Like, I mean, he can sometimes sound like a whiny little kid, but that is not to say that I ever hated the character. And that is just because, you know, he was a character that really got me into Star Wars. And so it's very interesting to see the assessment of how public perception has changed ever since, especially since Obi-Wan Kenobi came out last year. I think a lot of the reaction towards Hayden Christensen has really lightened down a little bit since then. I think they're actually, I mean, again, I think in the beginning, of course, like, I'm not talking about now, but like at least in the last, you know, I want to say maybe post 2015, that, you know, people start to really give a bit more credit to Christensen as Anakin Skywalker than ever before. And that's great to see, of course. Like, people are really complimenting him for, despite the fact that, again, he's been getting a lot of backlash. And now, like, ever since, like, I think the last 2 years, like, the amount of love that Christensen has been getting as Anakin Skywalker is great. I mean, I've been reading it all over the internet, which we'll talk about more as we get into kind of my second take, like, again, my second rewatch of the episode, just because I feel like this is a really big moment just to see him reprise Anakin Skywalker after what, nearly 18 years, I want to say. I think the math, I want to say it's 18 years, maybe it's less than that, but again, it's been nearly 2 decades since he's played Anakin Skywalker, and now he's finally getting the love, the overdue love that he should have gotten for quite some time. And now people are acknowledging that he actually indeed was the right person to play Anakin Skywalker. And so yeah, that's why I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video again, because for me personally, like, when it comes to a character like Anakin Skywalker, like, he got me into Star Wars, right? I mean, and that's, of course, a lot of that credit goes to my sister, who, again, was absolutely crazy about Star Wars back then and got me, you know, to really like Star Wars and start understanding kind of this universe and everything, and, you know, diving deep into the lore. And of course, like, having seen Christensen and his work, like, I knowing now how things were back then, it's really interesting to see how things have changed since. And of course, with the episode that dropped, 4 or 5 days ago, just to see the amount of love that he's been getting. And again, for me, like, just to see him come back, it's just a truly amazing moment. Like, who would have thought that this would have ever happened after for so long? And yeah, and that's why I want to do another take on this episode, just because I feel like there's just a lot more that I didn't get the chance to talk about in the first reaction video. And I think that it's worth really kind of doing another take in a second video to like really just break down a lot more of the things that, I could have, talked about in the first reaction, but I just didn't, just because again of how the setting was. And here it's like I'm a bit more in a comfortable position knowing that, okay, I've now watched the episode, I've now been reading the comments, I've now been reading the theories, speculations, that I think it's worth taking another dive into Ahsoka episode 5. So yeah, let's get right down into the episode right now. As I'm going to be doing this, the way I'm going to be doing that is I'm going to be actually showing the episode. Now I'll try to make sure that I can stop at the right moments, just because I do have to abide by fair use. So I'll do that. But of course, the big thing about this is to really just break down a lot of the visuals, a lot of the scenes that happened in this episode, and again, give my opinions that I wasn't able to give the first time around, that I want to do the second time around. So yeah, let's go right down into episode 5 of Ahsoka.
The same. You look old.
I love that. I mean, just the fact that, like, I have to talk about this a little bit, because I know there was a lot of mixed feelings about the aging technology on Hayden Christensen. I know there's a lot of comments. I really want to talk about that. So for one thing, like, I don't know if anyone remembers last year's Obi-Wan Kenobi. I don't believe they used CGI or the aging technology for that one flashback sequence between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker, where they're like, having some sort of, dueling skirmish, or something like that, or lightsaber practice fight. But if you remember that episode, like, you can tell that they definitely did not use the aging technology in that episode, whereas they did use it on Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan. But you can tell for a fact that, that in that episode, like, for the most part, like, Hayden Christensen looks pretty good. Like, he hasn't really aged too much since, Revenge of the Sith. But you can also tell that there is definitely a bit of this difference, because he was playing a Padawan and not his Jedi Knight form as Anakin Skywalker. So there was definitely a noticeable aging since then. So I was a bit surprised that they did not use the aging technology for that episode, just because I felt like it could have actually used a little bit of it. But here, like, I remember right before episode 5, a lot of people were feeling a bit squeamish about the de-aging technology being used on Hayden Christensen as Anakin, of course. Even I had expressed those concerns at the end of episode 4, because it did look a bit weird. Like, something just didn't look right at the end of that episode. Like, it seemed as if it was just really incomplete. And so I actually had expressed my concerns about this, just like, okay, how much are they going to use the aging technology for this episode? Because, like, I mean, if they're going to be going back and doing some flashback scenes, which I had predicted could have been one of the cases that we would have seen, Anakin Skywalker, then that would mean that they would have to utilize the aging technology. And it's just, we've seen kind of the mixed, the mixed response of it. Like, if you remember, of course, with The Mandalorian, how they use the aging technology on Mark Hamill for the role of Luke Skywalker, you can definitely tell things were a bit off-putting. Like, I mean, yeah, it's not as if it's a bad, version of it. I mean, it's a really good start to things, but you can definitely tell it's not perfect. Things just don't mesh very well. And again, like, I mean, it's definitely technology that is really just starting to become a bit more utilized nowadays than ever before. They're still trying to learn how to use it, but it definitely was a bit of a concern going to this one, just because, like, I've seen kind of the mixed, I guess you can say the mixed final product of the use of de-aging technology. Like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they kind of go a bit overboard on the de-aging. So that was definitely my concern going into episode 5 here, just because I figured that that was going to be utilized a lot more than what we saw in episode 4, let alone last year's Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I have to say, like, just having seen the sequences here, and we'll talk more about it as we get through some of the other sequences, like the ones from the Clone Wars and the Siege of Mandalore, that, you know, the way that they really were able to utilize the de-aging here was pretty flawless. I mean, or at least, like, near, like, faultless. Like, it just seemed as if they were able to really blend in things very well to make sure that, at least with Christensen, that he looked like he was the younger version of Anakin, or at least the version of Anakin Skywalker that I remember from Revenge of the Sith. So I have to give props. Like, the aging technology looked much better in this episode than we saw in episode 4. And that's a good sign, right? And again, just again, watching, just to see the visuals of Anakin Skywalker is just absolutely incredible. Like, you can literally just put a side-by-side image between the Anakin that we see in this episode and Anakin Revenge of the Sith, and it looks really close. I mean, that's not to say that, you know, it's exactly the same Anakin that we saw, like, you know, back then. Like, I mean, there are definitely some noticeable differences, but they've done a really good job with de-aging regardless. So that was just one thing I wanted to pinpoint, knowing again how interestingly they, you know, Ahsoka tells, or interestingly Ahsoka tells to Anakin how he hasn't really changed much, and I think a lot of that, again, it's also credited to Hayden Christensen, because he seems to be aging pretty well. Like, he still looks pretty young for the most part, although again, like, he is like in his early 40s, and we have noticed a little bit of his aging, but that is not to say that he still looks pretty good for, like, playing Anakin Skywalker, even if they had to use de-aging. Like, I've actually met not Anakin. I have met Hayden in person, so I'll talk more about that experience later on. But yeah, I mean, this is a really good this is a very good, like, thing to put in right here, like the way that they really just talked about the age here. Like, of course, Ahsoka has grown up after so many years, and yet Anakin looks like he's still from Revenge of the Sith. That was a really nice take right there. I love that point right there. I think that's like the one thing a lot of people are just noticing, that, oh, well, because they brought up the scene, we might as well just talk about the de-aging, right? And I think the de-aging is pretty good here. So that was just one thing I wanted to touch on. Oh man, I have to say, it's so incredible to see him. Basically, I mean, it seems as if he's wearing just roughly the same outfit from Revenge of the Sith. Like, it's just incredible how they were able to just allow him to rewear this uniform from back then. It's just awesome just to see this whole near replication of Anakin Skywalker from Revenge of the Sith. Of course, like, again, I think there could be a little bit of a Clone Wars there. I know there's some Clone Wars stuff later on the episode, of course, later on. But man, like, I mean, even then, they were able to even nail down the hair. That is awesome. Like, I have to say, props to the makeup department, props to the costume department for really going all out there in the accuracy of Anakin Skywalker, trying to bring back the Anakin Skywalker that we saw back in the prequel trilogies again. And again, Hayden Christensen, he looks absolutely great as Anakin. I mean, it makes me feel so heartfelt just having to re-experience the love I have for Anakin Skywalker from the prequels, and again, just Hayden Christensen reprising him. It's just absolutely incredible. Again, and we'll talk more about his performance as we get more into the episode.
It's a little late for that.
One is never too old to learn, Snips.
Okay, I have to stop here because there's really a lot to dissect, particularly regarding Hayden Christensen's performance here as Anakin. Now, I noticed immediately that his mannerism, his whole persona, seems very different from the Anakin I remember from Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. Now, having said that, right, I will say, for one thing, like, I think when it comes to Attack of the Clones, because he was still a Padawan, that he definitely felt a bit more of a youthful spirit, who, of course, was at times not always obedient, who may have defied rules here and there, or may sometimes sound whiny when it comes to talking about sand. But I will say, for one thing, if you were to rewatch Revenge of the Sith, you can definitely feel as if there's a much more maturity with regards to Anakin, but also how his anger really started to manifest. And this one, you can definitely see how things seem very different and how he is expressing things, how he's reacting to anything. Like, it seems as if here, like, it seems as if he feels a bit more of a mature, sophisticated character who seems, in a sense, a bit more wise now as a result of the things that have happened back then. Now, again, there are a lot of theories that people have of whether or not this is really Anakin or not, which I'll talk about later on, but I think the reason why I wanted to stop here is because, again, talking about Hayden Christensen's performance, because when you talk about, just the past comments about, Hayden Christensen and Anakin Skywalker and the execution of it all, a lot of people were attributing, again, the cause of why, Anakin seemed like an off-putting character as a result of Christensen's performance, right? People kept saying he's just a bad actor. He's someone who doesn't understand Anakin Skywalker or doesn't know how to really play out the character, so on and so forth. But I feel like this episode has really kind of refuted that. It really rebuked a lot of those criticisms, because honestly here, like, I felt as if Hayden Christensen did such a really great job of showing a much more different side of Anakin, who, again, seems far more mature, seems far more grounded. Again, it's a bit more self-aware. And the way that, again, he's talking to his Padawan, there's a bit more of that, I guess you can say, respect and discipline that we see a bit more here with Anakin. And it's really interesting to see that, because it does seem like as a contrast to what we've seen in, Revenge of the Sith or Attack of the Clones. But I think a lot of that is also attributing to the fact that, because we've had other content like the Clone Wars, for instance, to really kind of revamp a little bit of Anakin Skywalker, that it seems as if here, like, Christensen has really studied a lot of at least a lot of Anakin since then, like, with the new content that we've had, and it seems like he's able to utilize it, at least able to really organically embody a lot of that sort of Anakin into the character that we see here. And I think that really kind of exemplifies the fact that, despite all the comments that we've heard about, Anakin Skywalker, or at least Hayden Christensen being a bad actor, I think that has now really been rebuked now. Like, this is a really good example of showing how Hayden Christensen really can act. I feel like this is a different side of Anakin that, doesn't seem like the same Anakin that we see back then, but it still has a little bit of that embodiment where he does have that, that humorous side of him here and there. And we'll see more of that later on, of course. But you can definitely see how there's a difference with this sort of execution of Anakin. And not just that, right? I also was looking back at a lot of clips from Attack of the Clones and particularly Revenge of the Sith, and I started to notice that a lot of the issues with regards to Anakin's execution is not as a result of Hayden Christensen's performance or his acting or any of that sort, but a lot of the issues are really just about the direction and the writing and the dialogue. Like, I have to say, the dialogue in the prequel trilogy has been very off-putting. Things seem really out of the ordinary. Things don't seem really organic, and how they are really kind of just being said. And I think that people are really starting to now acknowledge that, having just seen, again, the first few minutes of this episode, that, maybe it may not, maybe what we've seen before with Anakin wasn't really the result of Hayden Christensen's performance, but more so just, George Lucas's fault at, not being a bit more, I guess you can say, finesse in terms of the direction and the writing and the dialogue. And here it's like, the dialogue seems much better. The whole writing for Anakin seems like a huge improvement since Revenge of the Sith. And again, it shows here. Like, it really shows here how Hayden Christensen seems far more comfortable in how he is manifesting Anakin Skywalker, one that we see before, of course, his transformation as Darth Vader, and how he is communicating with Ahsoka because of the fact that they definitely had, a brother-sister bond back during the Clone Wars. So that's something that I really wanted to mention. Just again, seeing a lot of the performances from the beginning to the end of the sequence in the World Between Worlds, like there is definitely a bit more of that sophistication with Christian's performance. He doesn't sound whiny. He sounds like he's far more mature, and also seems like as if he's integrated a lot of the performances from the Clone Wars into his portrayal here as Anakin. So I have to say, like, it's really great to see this renaissance, I guess. Can we say renaissance? I want to say renaissance. A renaissance for Hayden Christensen's run as Hayden Christensen. And this proves it right here. He seems very comfortable with the work he's been given now. Like, the writing seems far more of an improvement. And again, like, I just wish that we could see, I hope, I mean, not just wish, but I just hope that we get to see more of Anakin, because if this is what we're getting from Hayden Christensen, like, I cannot even imagine what kind of content that we could have gotten if he still stuck around as Anakin back then, right? So, wow, like, I have to say, like, the performance here is just, wow. I love it.
Or die.
Oh man, I have to say, like, again, I think in this moment you can get a little sense of Anakin from Revenge of the Sith, like, just his voice, right? I feel like the sound of his voice is really a reflection of the voice that we hear from Revenge of the Sith. Again, just the fact that a lot of this, again, the fact that Hayden Christensen hasn't played this character in over, what was it, at least 15 years hasn't played this character, and he still is able to embody a young Anakin Skywalker from back, like, from just like, right after Revenge of the Sith. It's just absolutely incredible. Again, just the fact that I have just nonstop compliments for Hayden Christensen. It's just such a whirlwind just to see an actor like him finally getting his due in terms of the praise, the acclaim, like, the love, of course. I mean, just seeing the little details of how we are really getting Anakin Skywalker back, it's just absolutely incredible. And just to see Hayden Christensen replay him, it's just, I mean, I don't even know what to say. It makes me so speechless. It makes me so, like, it makes me so ecstatic. It makes me so excited just to see him back, even if this could be the last time we see him. But wow, did he put such a, how he was able to put such a footing onto his character for so long, and really just proving all those naysayers, those doubters wrong. I mean, I absolutely love it. Like, again, it's just incredible seeing how he's managed to really just integrate different versions of Anakin and doing so away with perfection. So, wow, I'm just absolutely loving this. Okay, that reminded me a little bit of Revenge of the Sith Anakin right there. Again, wow, just the details of this episode. Just, like, you can really pinpoint where we can see a bit more mature Anakin, where we can see a bit more of the Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. That moment right there where he's just smiling. Let me just go back. Hold up. I probably will be able to get it. Hold on one second. There you go. Like, the way, just here. Just right here. Wow, like, that reminds me of Revenge of the Sith Anakin right there. Just that smile, like, whoa, it's just absolutely incredible. And of course, like, again, they're probably using a little bit of de-aging technology here to kind of dip down Hayden's aging a little bit, just so that he does appear as Anakin from Revenge of the Sith. But it seemed, again, a lot of it is pretty flawless. A lot of it is done with precision, and again, this just brings a smile on my face just seeing, again, if you were to do like a side by side, just how much of Anakin Skywalker is coming back. It's absolutely ridiculous. I love this so much, and this is just the beginning. We're only like maybe like 10 minutes into this episode, and I'm just absolutely loving how they really executed this episode, just from the costume, from the replication of, his makeup, his hairstyle, to just his mannerism, his way of just smiling. I mean, it's all just absolutely amazing. I just love it. And this is one scene that I know a lot of people have been sharing a little bit, again, because of that smile right there. But wow. Oh, it brings back a lot of memories right there. I just want to stop a little bit here because we do see a little bit of the action. And wow, like if you were to see a little bit of the moves, so let's talk about a little bit of the moves right here. Like, wow, like Hayden has not lost his energy. He still has that stamina that he had back in Revenge of the Sith. Now, I will say this, after watching this episode, I decided to look back at a couple of behind the scenes clips from Revenge of the Sith, just because I'm very aware of the fact that he put so much time and effort into perfecting the stunt work for a lot of the lightsaber fights, lightsaber duels. And I mean, I was not aware of how much dedication and practice that he put into it. Like I've watched a couple of them in the last few years, of course, but I decided to go in a much more deeper dive into it, and you can tell he absolutely was like, I'm going 110% on these lightsaber fights. Again, you can see the amount of energy he's exuding, and a lot of, as he's like, fighting off against Ahsoka. Like, you can, like, if you were to compare it between Rosario Dawson and Hayden, like, with Rosario, at least, like, you can tell, like, she isn't as athletic, she isn't as flexible in the way that that we can compare it to the way how Hayden is moving. And I think a lot of it might be more so because Rosario probably didn't have a lot more time to work on the choreography, let alone the fact that she's also in her 40s as well, or at least nearing her 40s, that she didn't have the chance to really kind of have that experience of learning the moves, learning how to use a blade. She probably had a much limited time for it. So I know there's been a lot of criticism, or at least a lot of comments regarding her, her way of building the lightsaber and how she's able to really maneuver with it. Like, there does seem to be a bit of this restriction with how she moves. And I think a lot of that is, one, because of her age, and two, because she doesn't have that experience that, Hayden has, where he's been playing this character since like in his 20s, whereas Rosario's only been playing, Ahsoka since, in the last 2-3 years. So I feel like a lot of that, I feel like she was already at a disadvantage in this fight a little bit, just because she doesn't have a lot more of that experience. And even then, I think that what she can do, I think she's done some pretty good moves. I know we'll talk about Ariana Greenblatt in a second, with how she had far more of flexibility in her movement, but I think even then, I think she does a really good job overall with trying to, equal the energy that Hayden's portraying. Now with Hayden, on the other hand, wow, like even after like 15 years, he seems as if he still has that same energy of Anakin as before. Like, he's putting in 110, 120%, and really just showcasing Anakin's true strength when it comes to being a Jedi and wielding really manifesting the Force. Like, again, just the way that he's able to fight off, like he's not holding back there. Like, the ways that he is able to put out the punches, he's not holding them back. You can tell he's going full force at Ahsoka, and that just brings a lot of memories of how Hayden, was able to play out Anakin Skywalker in Revenge of the Sith. Like, same case how he fought off against Obi-Wan Kenobi, or in the case of Ewan McGregor, where he really just goes all out and just really exuding that energy, like putting in all that strength and stamina to really show the full force of who Anakin Skywalker is, because of course he's a chosen one. And so again, like, just I did not expect, I think this is what I have to say, I did not expect to see Hayden Christensen to even just have half the energy of Anakin Skywalker from back then. Like, I expected that there was going to be some fight sequence, but not where he was able to really just show the full force of it. And that's what really shocked me, is that even at the age of 42, right? I think he's 42 from what I've read, but even at the age of 42, right? It's been over 15 years since he's played Anakin Skywalker. Yet it seems as if he hasn't lost a bit of that energy. I mean, again, the efforts, the amount of dedication he put into a lot of these fight sequences in this particular episode, like that's what really just wows me. So, and we'll see more of it. There are a lot of like incredible sequences here, and especially at the end. I want to talk a little about the end, of course, where they get to the final part of that lightsaber duel. But wow, like this was just the early signs of how Hayden Christensen was really not holding back on his punches. He was going to go full force and really pulling off the choreography. And he really, like, again, it doesn't seem as if he lost a single bit of that energy, which is wow. Like, I have to say props to that. So this bit is a bit interesting because I mean, for one thing, a lot of people can pretty much tell that Jason is force sensitive like his father. Like, immediately I was just like, oh wow, like he is definitely a force sensitive kid. Does that imply, or like, are they trying to foreshadow that he could become a possible Jedi in the future? Lots of questions about that, of course. Again, I don't have a lot of deep knowledge into characters like Jason and Hera beyond Rebels, but it seems as if, like, again, they're implying that he is very force sensitive like his father. It seems very clear here. The fact that he's able to even hear the duel between Ahsoka and Anakin is a really big deal. I know there's a lot of theories regarding the whole sequences right there. Like, people are saying that, oh, this might be just in Ahsoka's head, or that the fact is that this really did happen. And I think this is probably the one example where people are thinking, well, this must have really actually happened, because if Jason can sense it, then this must have at least happened, right? It must have not just been in Ahsoka's mind. Now, of course, again, like, a lot of people are still theorizing and still speculating, and I think a lot of that has to do a little bit of just this ambiguity of the world between worlds. Like, there's still a lot of uncertainty of how it actually operates, how it really works. And I think that's part of the reasons why there's still a lot of questions regarding the whole idea of the world between worlds and what really happened to Ahsoka as she was seriously, in a sense, basically drowning in the sea. But again, some really interesting bits right here. I think a lot of people are even saying that, Hera could even be force sensitive because she also heard the sound of the blade. So interesting sort of theories I've been reading around with regards to that. I think that's I think the most important part is I really pinpoint Jason's ability to use the force. But yeah, I mean, I'm very interested to see more of the developments regarding Jason. I don't know if that could really be a development for something in the future. Who knows? Maybe. Again, like, he is Kanan's kid. So, interesting bit right there. Lots of theories have been coming out in regards to kind of whether or not Ahsoka was really in the world between worlds. Was she really imagining it all? Did it really happen? I know there's a lot of theories behind it. There's a lot of debate regard to that. But lots of interesting bits where, some of the details may imply one side or the other. But yeah. Okay, I have to stop right there. I would recommend that you watch my reaction video for this, because if you recall, I absolutely lost my mind when he made that signature move. Like, if you don't know, this is basically Hayden Christensen's signature move, where he kind of does like this thing with like kind of circling around his lightsaber a little bit from like one side to the other, even though it doesn't really touch anyone. But it's such a signature move. It's a very noticeable move. If you, again, watched a lot of Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, he uses a lot in Revenge of the Sith. I recall this so many times. And so, of course, I literally lost my mind when he made that move. Like, I was just like, oh my god, he did the move again. Again, just the amount, just my compliments to Hayden Christensen for really going all out and showing the power of who Anakin Skywalker is. Like, I think even this episode, he's only using like the lightsaber with one hand. I want to say so, because again, just the amount of energy he's exuding onto a lot of the fight sequences here is just absolutely spectacular. Again, I think even though even though the actual fight itself may not be in comparison to kind of how well done it was with the Revenge of the Sith, I think that it's still a very big feat, because I think this is definitely some of the best Star Wars fights I've seen in a while since, you know, the sequel trilogies. I think this is probably the best I've seen so far since then. And this is again a testament, and this is like an example of that, and one of that because of Hayden Christensen playing Anakin Skywalker. Like, again, just the amount of force, the amount of energy he's putting into the fight, not holding back the punches, like, that is incredible. Like, he literally was like, I'm gonna go full-blown Anakin Skywalker when I'm playing him in this episode, and holy cow, he did it. He absolutely did it. Like, it just brings a smile to my face. So again, this, even though, again, as I said before, the fight sequences may not be in comparison to Revenge of the Sith, it still doesn't take away the fact that these are some very well done movements, maneuvers, choreography. It's absolutely phenomenal. And a lot of that, I mean, it seems as if like Hayden Christensen basically performed all the stunts here, just from the looks of it all. So, and again, the move right here where he does like the you know, the circle and then one side to the other, I'm pretty sure that's him. There's no denying it. It's gotta be him. So wow, again, I love the love for Hayden. I love that Hayden's going all the way with Anakin right here. It's absolutely spectacular. Just well done. Okay, I just watched a little bit of that episode. You can definitely get a sense where he does have to hold back a little bit on the Force. And again, there's like a couple movements here and there where he's just like, he has to kind of slow down a little bit of his pressure on Rosario, because I'm assuming because Rosario cannot keep up with Hayden. And again, as I said before, it's not because I don't think Rosario is not capable of it. I think it's just more so because she doesn't have a lot of experience with using, you know, how to use the blades of the lightsaber, like the way that, you know, Hayden has, because he's, again, played him for 2 movies and had a lot more time really trying to understand and how, and, you know, how, knowing how to wield the lightsaber, whereas I don't think Rosario had that opportunity. And again, Rosario's already in her 40s, whereas, you know, even though, again, Hayden's in his 40s as well, he's known how to use a blade since he was in his 20s. So, but even with that being the case, it does seem as if there are bits and pieces in this fight where he does have to kind of slow down a little bit on his fight, on his, like, you know, movements, to give a little bit of a chance for Rosario to kind of keep up with the choreography, which is totally fine by me. I don't think that it hurts the performance in any way, or just the whole meaning behind this episode, because the whole point is that, you know, what's happening here is Ahsoka is having a lesson, right? She's learning a lesson. She's right now in a moment where it seems as if she is still kind of in this gray area, like, well, which is very significant, where she's still in this gray area where she doesn't know how she feels about, you know, the things of her past, how her past is still haunting her a little bit as a result of, you know, her master playing a big role in the whole war against, you know, the whole galactic war. And, you know, she could also be someone who feels really guilty about it. You know, had she not left, maybe things could have taken a different turn. Like, there's a lot of things that could have happened. I can see how Ahsoka is feeling really guilty about it, how she now has to, you know, relive her past, to, or at least having to now really tackle her past to kind of find a resolution to a lot of what's have happened. And I mean, it's been like years. Like, I think by this point it may have been about 5 years since Palpatine was taken down, 5 years since Vader's death. And yeah, she's still feeling like this way, right? So this is a very big moment for her, being in the world between worlds, facing off against her former master, having this final lesson so that she can finally find some peace with her past. I think that that's what's really the most important part here. And then a lot of that is stemming from, you know, having to duel against her master. So yeah, I don't think that, you know, the fact that, you know, Rosario has to slow down a little bit on her movement because of the fact that she might not be as comfortable with the lightsaber in the way that, you know, Hayden has. And of course, it seems as if, again, you can tell, like, in bits and pieces, like some of the detailing and some of the fight here that, you know, Hayden has to kind of hold back a little bit, or like at least slow down just so that Rosario can catch up. But I don't think that's a big problem in my end. Again, I can understand the reasons for it. I still think that this episode still has a very effective means of what it's trying to imply for Ahsoka's arc. Oh, look at that smile. Oh, wow. He has a much softer voice here. Oh my god. Okay, I'm gonna be stopping here a lot because there's just a lot to dissect. For one thing, I noticed here, like, as Anakin is coming out from the fog and fighting into what seems to be one of the battles in Clone Wars, that here it seems as if Anakin has a much softer voice, like which would make sense because he'll be much younger than he is in Revenge of the Sith. So again, the precision, the whole execution of just going through some of the timelines of like the flashbacks is like absolutely incredible. But the big thing, of course, is the fact that we get a young Ahsoka. That was something I did not expect whatsoever. I thought we were gonna see just somehow we're gonna see like, you know, a version of, you know, Rosario, Dawson, Ahsoka, but it ended up being a much younger Ahsoka. It took me a while to just like process what was going on, just like because of the fact that we do see a much younger Ahsoka Tano, the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker during the Clone Wars. It took me a minute too. I was just like, I was just looking at the face and I was like, yo, this actor looks so familiar, because if you do not know, I actually mentioned this back in the reaction video, that the actor playing the young Ahsoka is the same actor who played young Gamora in Avengers Infinity War, and also played the Sasha from Barbie. So Ariana Greenblatt is the actor's name. That took me, like, I knew her face looked familiar. I instantly was like, isn't this the same actor who played young Gamora? Which of course I was able to confirm when I saw the credits, the end credits. But I have to say, the fact that they actually decided to go and do a flashback of what was basically a moment from the Clone Wars was very ballsy, but excellent. Like, what a great move to really pull for this episode. Just again, really dissecting a lot of what's going on in Ahsoka's mind, what she's feeling, and then of course again the nostalgia of not just going back to the Clone Wars, but having Hayden Christensen play a Clone Wars version of Anakin Skywalker. Like, there was definitely a lot of questions with regards to whether or not he'll be able to embody that sort of character, because again, there is a bit of that difference between the Clone Wars Anakin and the prequel trilogy Anakin. And I think that, and we'll see here as we get more and more into later parts of this flashback, that Hayden Christensen does a great job of really playing different versions of Anakin. And here, again, as I said before, even before, just moments before the scene, like from this point where I stopped the video, you can actually hear a much more of a soft voice Anakin, as if he was slightly younger, someone who hasn't been, you know, who hasn't moved to the dark side yet, who hasn't embodied Darth Vader yet. And you can definitely see how he's a bit more of a relaxed Anakin Skywalker, who has a much more of a very mutual relationship with Ahsoka. So I cannot wait to talk more about this in just a moment, but that was just something I wanted to pinpoint.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my god, again, the soft voice Anakin right here. The fact that he's even wearing the outfit from the Clone Wars, I mean, perfection. It's deep perfection. Like, it really brings chills down my spine knowing that, you know, they were able to really do a great job of replicating everything with precision, accuracy. I mean, I don't know how else this could have been done. Like, I mean, I don't know if there's any way that this could have been done perfectly. I think that Filoni does a great job of setting up the pieces, really showing everything that's going around. And even then, and we'll see it again in a much later part of this scene, the de-aging, right? The de-aging of Anakin Skywalker, one who seems a bit more close to a much younger version in the Clone Wars. Even here, right? He still, I believe in this one, he actually has Anakin's hair from the Clone Wars, because it's not as long as the one from Revenge of the Sith, and of course it's definitely not the short hair from Attack of the Clones. It seems as if it is very much the hairstyle that he has in the Clone Wars, and it definitely fits in Hayden Christensen very well. And again, just his ability to really embody the Clone Wars version of Anakin, like, you can tell he studied the character too hard. He studied the character too hard, understanding kind of his personality, how the voice actors were able to really give this personality of who Anakin Skywalker is during the Clone Wars. And I think, again, another testament that Hayden Christensen is not a bad actor. Just the writing was pretty bad during the prequels. And here, like, we finally got some really decent writing, and it seems as if he was really comfortable with the work he was given, and doing so in a way that, again, you can see the perfection of how he was able to exude Anakin Skywalker, or the Clone Wars version of Anakin Skywalker in this particular scene. Oh man, you can hear the soft voice of Anakin Skywalker from Revenge of the Sith. The fact that even Hayden was able to replicate that voice, just amazing. And again, just the relationship, the dualship that we're getting between them is absolutely phenomenal. We'll see more about that in a second. But again, props of Hayden Christensen of really just embodying this version of Anakin Skywalker. Something that I would have not thought that would have been possible. And he definitely defied those, basically the impossible, and made it possible. I mean, just, wow, props to him.
Is that all I'll have to teach my own Padawan one day? How to fight?
Do you even want Padawan? You know, teaching's not always cracked up to be.
Really? What makes you say that?
I have to say, there's a lot to really break down from this conversation between a young Ahsoka and a much younger Anakin, of course. So let's get right down into just the performance first off. The performances by Ariana Greenblatt and Hayden Christensen is absolutely phenomenal here. Like, you can tell just from their dynamic here, it's very organic. It feels as if, you know, it doesn't ever feel so awkward, because usually, like, when it comes to like a lot of TV shows and movies, and when you see characters interacting for the first time, you know, it can really be a mixed bag of how coordinated their chemistry is, as well as whether or not their chemistry will fit. And I feel like in this one, they definitely were able to get the relationship down to the T here. It seems as if they actually were, you know, they've known each other for quite some time, even though this is literally the first time as live action actors portraying the characters on the screen. And they do such a brilliant job of showcasing that relationship between them. So lots of props to Ariana Greenblatt and Hayden Christensen for just the way that they're able to portray their characters, setting up this chemistry between them. It seems as if it seemed very natural, very organic. And again, a very good replication of how their relationship is in, you know, the Clone Wars. So that's one thing I want to mention, because again, the performances here is absolutely phenomenal. Just the fact that we're even seeing Ahsoka, right? So this young Ahsoka, and how Ariana Greenblatt is playing a young Ahsoka, the same Ahsoka who, you know, left the Jedi Order because, you know, she felt as if her purpose kind of wasn't in the right mindset, right? She wasn't feeling as if she was in the right place. And here it is, right? She's questioning all of that. We get that sense of Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, where again, she's questioning a lot of things, whether or not she wants to be a warrior or she wants to do something more, right? Or is she always going to be fighting? And is that always going to be the case here, right? So again, that's also playing a bit of kind of this confliction of what Ahsoka is dealing with in this moment. One thing, of course, again, dealing with her past, maybe feeling that guilt of, her abandoning Anakin Skywalker, and the fact that, again, of that confliction that she has with the Jedi Order and why she never completed her, her training. And even with that being the case, right? Like, again, this is a really great testament of how the actors here have really just portrayed a lot of that complexity, how these characters are dealing with a lot of these complications in their lives, and why it's becoming a bit more of, I guess you can say, a very tricky situation, how they want to move forward with their lives. And here it is again, just again, the performances that we're seeing from the actors here, really just exuding those characters who again are feeling a lot of this confusion, this order of like how they're trying to feel right now, what they're trying to process. I mean, it's absolutely great. I love how they really go back into the flashback scenes of the Clone Wars, just to really kind of replicate what the feeling is like for Ahsoka, what she's dealing with, what her mindset is. And again, even with Rosario Dawson playing Ahsoka and giving off that much older vibe of Ahsoka, who is now, you know, a bit more older, a bit more, you know, aware of her surroundings, and again, it's a bit more mature and sophisticated. Here it's like we see a much more youthful side of Ahsoka, who has questions, who may not always be obedient, right? And not just that, but lots of questions, right? When you are someone who's very young and just again starting to realize kind of that fact that, you know, the world has its dark side to it, you start to have questions, you start to have curiosities about what's going on here. And I think Ariana does a really great job of exuding that youthfulness of who Ahsoka is. And of course, again, extension, the Ahsoka who eventually does leave the Jedi Order, someone who again feels like confusion. And here it is, I think again, props to Ariana Greenblatt for really just showcasing that young side of Ahsoka. I think again, I know a lot of people are talking about having kind of like a spin-off where we can actually have a live action version between the young Ahsoka here, as well as Hayden Christensen as the Clone Wars version of Anakin. I would be so up for it. I mean, just again, this is a very good example of how their dynamic is working here. I feel like it really works out perfectly. I mean, I have really no criticism, no notes regards to like anything out of the ordinary with regards to how they're playing off their relationship. It seems as if they were able to really understand the characters, understand the people around them, and you know, the dynamic of it all, and it just played out so well in this whole sequence here, in this flashback sequence. I mean, again, props to Hayden Christensen and Ariana Greenblatt for really just executing their characters in ways that, you know, it feels as if we're also watching like a live action version of the Clone Wars, right? So props to them on that. That was one thing I definitely missed out on talking about in the reaction video, just because there's just so much to really kind of just take in. But this is definitely one thing for sure. Like, the performances here is absolutely phenomenal. And again, if there is any chance of a live action, now I know the actor Ariana Greenblatt, even though she can't really talk about the actual episodes, of course, because of the actor's strike, she can't do any interviews, and it sucks because in extension, Hayden Christensen can't do any interviews as well. But I know she's kind of been able to slyly just put some comments here and there without, you know, breaking the strike rules. And I believe she had a discussion with, I think there was one tweet where she actually had a discussion with Christensen, maybe, I'm not 100% sure, but there was a tweet, and now a lot of people are now speculating that there could be some talks of a live action Clone Wars where we get to see both a live, you know, Hayden Christensen and Ariana Greenblatt playing their characters. So I don't know if that's really a thing. There's been a bit of that rumor mill going around just because of that one specific tweet from the actor, but again, I would not be against it. I would love to see a live action version of the Clone Wars where we get to see again, for one thing, we get to see more of Hayden, and not just that, we get to see a live action version of Ahsoka, who again is a much younger version. I think that Ariana does a really great job of really portraying the character. So we'll see if that even ever comes to fruition. We'll see. I mean, again, Ahsoka's still running, so we gotta wait until that ends, and of course after the strikes end, maybe there might be discussions about it, but I'm totally not against the idea. Now, another thing, of course, I want to talk about is just the Clone Wars version of Anakin. I know I discussed this a little bit earlier in one clip, and again, just talking about how Hayden Christensen is able to embody the Clone Wars version of Anakin Skywalker is absolutely phenomenal. Again, showing that he can really actually act, and that what happened during the prequel trilogies was not a matter of fact that he's a bad actor, but it's just very poor writing and direction. And here it's like he seems as if like he's been playing Anakin for such a long time, especially the Clone Wars version. He's embodied his persona, his mannerism. He seems far more relaxed here and somewhat a bit more lighthearted, and does have a little bit of this, cheekiness inside him. Like, I love it. Like, I just love this version of Anakin here, where again, Hayden Christensen is able to embody that sort of character. Someone who feels far more relaxed, someone who has this mutual relationship between with his apprentice. I absolutely love it. And again, I think there's one sequence here, right? So I'm gonna do a close up. So here it is, right? I think that, honestly speaking, like, I mean, there's a lot of things that could have helped this, but the de-aging here, like, of the Clone Wars version of Anakin is absolutely great. I mean, a lot of people are complimenting the work on this, and I think the reason why a lot of this was able to be perfected is because of the fact that they use a fog. I know a lot of people have some mixed feelings about the fog, background. I think it definitely helps out because it definitely puts in the eeriness of the whole setting, what Ahsoka's feeling. Again, a lot of this confusion, the confliction that she's going through, showing again kind of the eeriness of the war, because this is during the Clone Wars. And, her whole past with Anakin, and how there is a bit of that grimness with what happened and the results of it, because again, how she left and in a sense, ended her training with him, right? Like, there's a lot of this eeriness, there's a lot of that grimness that we get out of this episode, because of the fact that there are the way that, again, just setting up the setting, the visuals and all of it all, just to set up kind of that feeling in this episode where Ahsoka is feeling in her world, right? This is what she's feeling. This is how, what it feels like for her, particularly in her mind, how things are like in her world. Like, everything's a bit of a fizzy sort of mindset. So I think for me personally, the fog plays a really big role in setting up and elevating a lot of the tone that's going on in this particular scene, because again, it's very eerie. It feels very, confusing, which I feel like that's supposed to be the point. Again, she's asking a lot of questions, and a lot of that has to deal with, again, with Anakin Skywalker. And I feel like not just that, but not just having the setting that also elevates that sort of energy and aura into this particular moment, but I think it also benefited in the fact that, it helped with trying to set up the de-aging for Anakin Skywalker here. Like, I feel like Hayden looks pretty good with how, like, showing a much younger version of Anakin Skywalker, especially again because he's 42. It's gonna take some time to really show a much younger version of him, and I think here it's like the de-aging looks very well done. It looks like there isn't any blemishes to it whatsoever. Like, it seems to really blend in very well, and I think that, again, I think having that fog also helped, and not just setting up the tone and the setting of what's going on in the moment, but also benefited a lot of the technical side of it all, and trying to do the de-aging, trying to set up the visuals and the cinematography of what's going on in the moment. So again, bravo to Filoni for really thinking through with this episode, being thoughtful of how he wants to execute the details of it. I think, again, it really works out very well. It sets up kind of the mood, the setting, the aura, the visuals of it all, kind of what's going on around it. I think, again, this is a really well done sequence here. And just the fact that he even replicated not just any Anakin Skywalker scene, but a scene from the Clone Wars, just wow. I mean, applause to Filoni just for really the achievement for something that he was able to achieve right here. Like, that could have, again, something that would seem impossible, yet he made it possible. So well done.
You'll die.
Ooh, then you die. Oh my god. The big moment here. The recurring message. Ah. Okay, that transition hit hard. I knew this was gonna happen, by the way. I had a really good feeling. Like, I knew deep down that this is going to happen. I knew that we were going to get references of Darth Vader somehow, somewhere. That we were somehow going to get some sort of, side by side of Anakin and Darth Vader, because, again, like, of what happened during the war with the Galactic Empire and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that transition hit so hard. I I literally lost it. Like, again, if you see my reaction, you'll know, like, you'll see my reaction for it, where I literally just like, I absolutely lost my mind looking at that transition. It hits so hard here, but it's so perfect and well done, and it's beautiful, but it's very eerie and grim. And again, just seeing how Ahsoka is just viewing him from afar, seeing kind of that change up between Anakin and Darth Vader. Again, I feel like that's a little bit of the piece of giving us this idea that what is going on here is that Ahsoka is feeling guilty. Like, she knows for a fact that at some point, as they get closer to the end of the Clone Wars, that Anakin's going to make his transformation from Anakin Skywalker to Darth Vader, and he's going to eventually turn to the dark side. And again, this is going into where we're going to that territory where she knows for a fact that she feels guilty for leaving him, and wonders if, leaving him was one of the reasons why he became Darth Vader. And of course, again, the past of, what has happened. And not just that, but whether or not she has this willingness to live or die, right? I mean, here he talks about if you don't, learn to become a fighter, if you don't learn to become a warrior, then you'll die, right? And this is something that he keeps bringing up a lot, so many times throughout this episode. Now, of course, even then, right, even after this episode, there's still a lot of debate about what was really the lesson. I think there's still a lot of this ambiguity about it, because in one sense, like, some people think that it's probably just her trying to finally resolve her guilt for what happened to Anakin Skywalker, right? And then there's another sense where it's like, well, it's a matter of whether or not she would accept kind of the fact that she needs to be a warrior, someone who needs to understand, in the sense of understanding that she needs to be a warrior, what it takes to be one, as well as trying to move on from Anakin, right? So there's a lot of things that people are still confused about what was really the lesson, because it's not really clear cut. They don't really like just bluntly mention, oh, this is what the lesson is. This is what the true lesson is. Like, they don't really go into details of it. We see that at the end of it as well. But even then, I feel like this is kind of a hint of what it was trying to imply as a big point of what's going on here with Ahsoka, and that is that she does have this feeling of what happened with her, this her past haunting her as a result of Anakin Skywalker, and of course she has a deep connection with him, and so just having this transition is beautiful, for one thing. Just again, I can watch this transition like millions of times and not be tired of it. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But again, just seeing Ahsoka and how she's reacting to it all, I mean, it makes sense. It's very on point with what's going on with her arc. I feel like with this, it definitely brought up the fact that the show is about Ahsoka, and it's not about Sabine, it's not about the rebels, it's about Ahsoka, right? I feel like this was something a lot of people were arguing about. Oh, this is not real. Like, at least the first few episodes, they were definitely far more focused on the rebels, and I think a lot of that's just because they wanted to introduce those characters for viewers who are a bit more casual Star Wars watchers. But I think this is the episode that really solidified that this is a show about Ahsoka. This is about her and trying to resolve a lot of her deeper conflictions and a lot of her deeper issues that she has going on in her mind. And I think that this episode plays a really big role in setting up a lot of that arc for her. So, and again, the big part being Anakin Skywalker. So yeah, again, love this transition, love what's going on here. I absolutely love how they really start to set the pieces for Ahsoka's arc, as well as setting up this resolution for her, and which again we'll get to more in the end of what this means for her arc. Okay, I just want to stop here a little bit because, of course, this is the Siege of Mandalore. This is like right towards the end of the Clone Wars. A couple of things I just want to say is that the fighting sequence here is pretty awesome. I have to say, Ariana's energy here and how she's executing a lot of these moves is absolutely exceptional. That was just one thing I want to say. I feel like that really kind of exuded a lot of who Ahsoka is in the series as well. Like having a lot of that energy, having a lot of that boost with her, that stamina. That's one thing I wanted to mention right here, just because again, like I know a lot of people are contrasting between Rosario Dawson's Ahsoka and Ariana's Ahsoka, and of course Rosario's Ahsoka is a bit more of a slower fighter who thinks about their moves before actually executing them, like trying to assess their enemies before, you know, conducting a move on them. And here it's like we see Ahsoka who's just like who's not thinking at second thought, who actually goes into action, really showing off a lot of her moves, her energy, her stamina, not holding off her punches. I think that we've been seeing a lot of this contrast between those Ahsokas, but it doesn't really matter. As I said before, I think a lot of that could also attribute to Rosario Dawson not having a lot of that experience, but also again showing a lot of that maturity of who Ahsoka is and how she's changed since the Clone Wars, right? So, but yeah, just wanted to stop you because of the fighting here. Like, the way that she was able to really just fight and maneuver was absolutely incredible. I was just like, I was really impressed by that. So that's just one thing I wanted to mention right here. Tamora Morrison is back as Rex, although I don't know if we're gonna see more of Rex. I hope we see more of Rex. If this is the only time we get to see Rex, that sucks, but yeah, glad we at least got a Rex moment.
Just as I inherited knowledge from my master, and he from his.
Again, I love that maturity and sophistication. You get a sense of Anakin's anger just really starting to build up right there. I love this moment too. Just the fact that he pulled out his Sith Lord saber. And I have to say, the fact that they were able to transition this moment from his Anakin during the Clone Wars and of course Revenge of the Sith to his Darth Vader, his turn to becoming the Darth Vader. Wow, I love how they were able to do that transition from that moment on. And as we said, we all knew that at some point we're going to get that Darth Vader of him coming out. Because if you remember episode 4, just before they ended that episode, we could hear Darth Vader's theme song playing. So we all knew that Darth Vader was going to have a play here. Like, he was going to be mentioned for sure. And just to see Anakin, just to see Hayden reprise kind of that really specific period where he was starting to become this refreshed version of Darth Vader, or at least the beginnings of Darth Vader. I mean, absolutely great. Like, you can get this, like, even before this moment, right? You can get the sense of the tension building up, the sense of his anger fueling. I mean, you can get that sense. Like, you start to really get a bit of the Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker in him, of course, without a little bit of that whininess, or that, you know, disobedience of him. But here it's like you can definitely feel the sense of anger coming out of him. And wow, the fact that, you know, Hayden had to play not just 1, 2, but 3 different versions of Anakin Skywalker, you have to give props to him. He played the Clone Wars version, he played the Revenge of the Sith version, he played the Darth Vader version. I mean, that is not easy to do. And I feel like in each sense you can, or in each phase, right, of this episode, of the flashback sequences, right, you can get the sense of how we get different versions of Anakin and how we're slowly getting more towards the Darth Vader version, how he becomes a bit more angry, how he becomes a bit more pain, how he feels a bit more pain as a result of what's going on and what resulted as a result of everything that's going on, the betrayal and all that sort of stuff, right? So I have to say, again, props to Hayden Christensen. You can get the sense of just how he really just portrayed this character with perfection again. That's just one thing. And I feel like this is where I have to really give utmost praise for him, for really just, again, having dealt with so much backlash, having dealt with so much criticism for so many years, and now finally proving a lot of those critics wrong and really showing them that he can actually play Anakin Skywalker, and doing so again with like such, I guess you can say, with such finesse, right? I mean, again, absolutely great. And I feel like, again, with what's happening around with the visuals, the scenes in this episode, it's absolutely phenomenal. A lot of the props, again, not just to Hayden Christensen, but for Dave Filoni, again, with his direction, his ability to really understand the Anakin Skywalker that really set up kind of the tides and turns of Star Wars, but set up basically the course of the universe here. And now here it is. We get to see again Hayden Christensen play Anakin, and playing the Anakin that again has a really big impact on a character like Ahsoka. Look at those red eyes too. Like, the red eyes just bringing it just brings so much chills that he's really turning into Vader right here, and yet having a little bit of that embodiment from Revenge of the Sith. Again, the precision is right there. Applause for that. Oh, he's not even holding back either. He's not holding back in this fight. Like, you can feel the sense of tension and anger and energy, and just in that fight sequence, oh my god, he did not hold back. He definitely did not hold back. Wow. See, like, as I'm saying, like, Hayden Christensen 100% stole this episode because of the fact that he was able to really show 120% of his work into the screen here. Just again, and I feel like because of the fact that Ariana is younger, he was able to go and show off a much more of a full-forced Anakin Skywalker. You can get the sense of the energy and stamina from this fight right here, just from the few moves, right? Like, he did not hold back. You can get the sense of how he was going all out in the sequences here. He was not tired. He had the energy. He was energized. I mean, wow. Like, I mean, absolutely incredible. Oh. Oh man, that is so cool. I mean, for again, another amazing transition from Vader to Anakin. Absolutely incredible right there. Again, just how thoughtful some of the sequences were in this episode. Again, props to Dave Filoni for really just thinking through just the execution of it, really just putting in a bit of that flair, that touch, a bit of that creativity and innovation with setting up the sequences, making it so that there is a bit of that mysticism behind it. But not just that, right? I think another thing here is that we get to hear him say, "You lack conviction." And there's definitely a sense of a different voice with that. We get a sense of like a mixture of Anakin as well as Darth Vader. And it's just incredible how this was well thought out. Like, the details of this is just absolutely incredible, and just showcasing again this really dark moment for Ahsoka, knowing that this is what really changed the trajectory of her life, how she feels guilty in this moment as a result of her, not being with Anakin, not, taking things into her own hands, and how the past has basically haunted her. Again, just just as I'm looking at more of these sequences, I start to notice more of the details, the whole practicalities of how they were setting up the technical aspects for it, the visuals. I mean, everything is so stunning about how everything was played out in these sequences, whether it be the flashback, whether it be the fight sequences, right? Whether it be the dual saber fights or whatever, right? I think here it's like, again, you get the sense of everyone putting in 150% and trying to replicate some of these really big moments, trying to portray the energy, the tension, the anger, the pain that's going on as a result. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. It's one of the reasons why I keep watching these sequences over and over again, because there's just so much to really digest with what's going on. Of course, for one thing, what it means for Ahsoka and her arc moving forward, and then another, because of the fact that we get to see Anakin Skywalker back, the nostalgia of it all, but also kind of getting that Anakin that we never got to see before, and yet it really pulled off so well in this episode. I mean, it's just so rewatchable. Like, I could watch this like 10 times, or heck, I could watch this like maybe 1,000,000 times, and I would not be tired of rewatching them ever and over again. And yeah, you can even get a sense here. He's not holding back on here. He's really going 100% on those moves. Like, holy cow. And the anger, you can just see the anger. Oh, absolutely, just phenomenal. Oh, that's so cool, because you can see her eyes turn yellow right there. So she almost kind of got in, it looked like she was almost turning into the dark side, but she didn't, of course. This is just fantastic. I mean, the fight sequences, performance, the energy, the mannerism, the whole aura of Anakin Skywalker, it's absolute perfection. I mean, I have to say, it's such a pleasure seeing Hayden Christensen back as Anakin Skywalker, like after so many years, after so much of the backlash, after being, being destroyed by critics for his performance for so long, and to the point where he basically had a hiatus from acting. I mean, it's great to see that he's feeling the love again. It's great to see that he's finally getting his due as Anakin, knowing that he was all along the right choice as Anakin Skywalker. I mean, again, as I said before, my sister and I, we absolutely loved Anakin Skywalker as a character. We thought Hayden, for the most part, was the right actor to play him. And that's just our experience because of the fact that we were first introduced to the prequel trilogies and then before going into the original. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal to see the widespread love that Hayden is feeling right now. The fact that, again, just the universal love that has been expressed all over online. I mean, it's pretty universal. It's all over the place. And I'm happy for him. I'm super, super happy for him. As I said before, I actually had a chance to go and meet Hayden Christensen. And I don't know how people have ever felt about him, but I got the chance to go meet him earlier this year at MegaCon. And he was an absolute darling. He was a sweetheart. I mean, even though it was just for a minute or two just meeting him, I have to say, like, you can tell this guy just really was feeling the love from the Star Wars fans. Like, I think even for me, like, I mean, I had a photo op with him. I didn't even get the chance to do a autograph because his autographs were actually sold out by the time I wanted to buy them, but I was lucky enough to get a photo op. But even in the photo op, right? Photo ops are usually about 2 seconds. I actually had a chance to really interact with him for about a good minute, maybe 90 seconds, because he wanted to meet me. He wanted to talk to me. And although I'm not gonna lie, I actually got a bit nervous because I was meeting the Anakin Skywalker, so this guy who I've known for so many years, who I've watched for so many years, who got me into Star Wars, and now I'm meeting him. And not just that, but he was also my sister's idol, and my sister's crush, of course. And here it is. I'm meeting him face to face, and it was really incredible to see how he was very attentive, how he literally was willing to listen to all his fans and hearing what they have to say. I had a really great experience just meeting him, even though it was just for a quick minute or 90 seconds. But I have to say, like, he is feeling the love. I know, at least when I met him, he's really embracing the love that he's been getting after all those years. And I hope that he now knows how much people love him, how much this means to everyone who've been following Star Wars. And this is a testament. I think this episode really proved how big and how influential he was for Star Wars, and how he really solidified the character of Anakin Skywalker. And again, a lot of the flaws and some of the criticism for how it's executed is not really his fault, but more so, again, the direction and the writing from the prequels. Again, I literally been rewatching some of the prequel stuff, and I mean, it's not just Hayden Christensen, right? Like, you can even tell there are moments where even Natalie Portman and Ewan McGregor are struggling to really quote out any of the lines and particular scenes where you can definitely tell the atmosphere feels really off. And here it is. Like, I mean, again, I'm absolutely loving the renaissance that we're dealing with in terms of Hayden Christensen and his return to Anakin Skywalker, the amount of love he's been getting. I guess you can say it's kind of like a celebration for Hayden Christensen's return, as well as kind of I guess the nostalgia of it all, and as well as just, realizing the fact that he was always the right person for the job, and he's getting the love, he's getting the support, he's getting the devotion. I mean, it's there. It's finally coming out after so many years. This episode really proved it all, for sure. And And again, I'm gonna keep on watching these episodes, like these sequences for sure, because they're just absolutely spectacular. He put in so much energy into it. He put so much effort into executing these episodes, really setting them up, playing them out. Again, I have no words to say how much this really means to me as a Star Wars fan, what it means to me knowing that this is something that we truly needed for a long time. And again, I think because of the sequence, I feel like my interest in Star Wars has really rejuvenated in a way that like never before, like at least not since The Force Awakens. And that is not to say that, Andor isn't great or Mandalorian seasons 1 or 2 aren't great. They're totally great as well. I mean, Andor, it's on its own level and setting up this different side of Star Wars story where it's about sophistication, really, really going deep down into the actual microcosm of how life is really like during this really dark period. And then of course Mandalorian seasons 1 and 2 is about setting up this dynamic between Grogu and Mando and showing this father, almost this like surrogate father-son relationship. But I feel like after this episode, like my whole mindset, my whole mentality for Star Wars has really changed in ways that I feel like a lot of that nostalgia is really starting to come back. I think that's what it really means. I think it's about the nostalgia. And I think the nostalgia this time around has really kind of hit me this time. Like, and I just said before, like with Obi-Wan Kenobi, when it came out last year, I thought it was all right. There are definitely a lot of flaws to how that, the whole series was played out, how it was organized, how it was set up. Like it could have just been a movie in my opinion. And I think a lot of the issues were because a lot of the episodes were kind of dragging. The stories kind of went a bit too, kind of dried a little bit, as well as the fact that there was some inconsistency in the storytelling as well as the character development here and there. And so I feel like that was just kind of a bit of a miss for me. But this one, I feel like it really was just well done. I think it was just really perfect. In this particular episode, it does do a great job of bringing a lot of that nostalgia, really tackling some really big issues that are going on with Ahsoka and the characters around her, as well as addressing the whole situation regarding Anakin Skywalker. That I feel like a lot of the others, a lot of the other previous content we had before haven't really gone into the depths of. And I think that I think Dave Filoni does a really great job overall, giving us this episode that really kind of again changed the landscape of Star Wars in ways that we never knew would have been possible. And I think that again a lot of applause goes to Hayden Christensen for putting in all that energy into this character, and again putting in so much dedication to really reprising this role after so many years. So props to them for that. I love how Ahsoka is just smiling throughout the last few moments of this episode, because before she always seemed very stoic in her facial expressions and not ever really smiling, but here it's like she is smiling nonstop. Like she cannot stop grinning, and I feel like it really shows that she kind of had a bit of a rebirth as a result of her experience at the World Between Worlds. I know there's a lot of theories in regards to what really happened in that whole sequence here. Again, people are saying that it was just in her mind. Others saying that she really was in the World Between Worlds. We'll see if they actually, address what really happened. But even that being the case, I think what is very important is that Ahsoka has now become a very changed person. I love one of the things that people are comparing this to is Gandalf. Like Gandalf the Grey, how before with Ahsoka, she was always in a gray attire, to really kind of reflect on her much more of a conflicted side, confused side, someone who still has a lot of grudges to really deal with. And now it's like, well, she's now wearing white, like the way Gandalf the White was, who becomes a bit more enlightened, someone who has finally been rejuvenated, someone who has finally felt like they've been refreshed, or in a sense, again, having a rebirth, or having been reborn as a result of a really life-changing moment. And I feel like that is I feel like that's a really valid point here. I think that could very possibly be the case. Some people are arguing whether or not if she has finally made her transformation into this white suited version of Ahsoka. And we'll see how it all goes as we get more and more into the final 3 episodes. I feel like that's a really great assessment and comparison to see here how, again, because of her very influential moment in the World Between Worlds, that she's now become a very changed person, and as a result she is now someone who feels a bit more energized, a bit more relieved, relaxed, someone who feels like they've been really resolved as a result of everything that's happened, and again feeling as if she's now reborn. So I feel like that's a really great way to kind of explain a lot of the developments that have happened so far up till this moment. And I think, again, the key definitely was Anakin Skywalker. There's no denying it. I mean, her story is very connected. It's very interconnected to Anakin Skywalker. And I think that this one little prick of a dark moment in her life and having some resolution to it, I feel like that's really important. I feel like that was a really important bit whatsoever. And I think that, again, that's one of the reasons why we all suspected that Anakin was going to return without a doubt, because of their past, because of what happened as a result of the war, after the Clone Wars, all that sort of stuff. And I think I think Filoni has done such a great job of setting up kind of the aftermath of what would have happened since not since the Clone Wars, but since the fall of the Galactic Empire and the fall of Darth Vader, to really kind of go into a deeper study of some of the characters and how they try to deal with some of their darkest moments in their life. So yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this episode. I think I've pinpointed everything I needed to say, especially because, again, I feel like I was really going into a nostalgic journey in seeing Anakin Skywalker once again after so many years, and just again Hayden Christensen proving that he was always the right person to play Anakin Skywalker. And it's not just that, right? I think that this was a very, very crucial point in Ahsoka's story, finding that resolution in regards to her past that has been haunting her for quite some time, and has been a pretty big grudge in her mind for a while, and probably what has been playing a part of her dynamic with Sabine and why she's having sort of this really complicated relationship. And who knows, right? I think as we get into the last 3 episodes, we're definitely gonna be, of course, I feel like we're definitely gonna probably at some point find Thrawn. They're probably gonna find Thrawn. We're probably gonna see Thrawn show up either in the last episode or even the second to last episode. We'll see about that. But most importantly is that this really was a crucial moment in really progressing Ahsoka's story moving forward. She feels like, I think after that moment, after her reunion with Anakin, that she's now become a reborn character, someone who's finally, resolved a really big grudge that she's had for so many years. And now we'll see how this will reflect on moving forward, now that she has this really clean mindset, as she tries to and look for Thrawn, as well as, in a sense, rescuing Sabine. But yeah, that's all I have to say about Ahsoka episode 5. I feel like I pinpointed everything I need to say. As I said before, I think that a lot of this was just more so kind of this nostalgia ride for me, and how incredible it was that, Dave Filoni was able to execute this episode. The creativity that there was put into, and just the thought of it all, to set up not just kind of what's going to happen between Anakin and Ahsoka, but what's happening around them, setting up the details such as the background, such as the costumes, such as kind of their facial makeup and costumes. I think it was all done with perfection. Is this my favorite episode from Ahsoka? I guess I can say so. I feel like this is probably one of my favorite episodes in terms of Star Wars content. And not just that, but I think it's probably one of the most important episodes in Star Wars since Disney acquired Lucasfilm. So who knows? And I know a lot of people have been discussing whether or not this was the last that we've seen of Anakin Skywalker. And of course, there have been other theories about whether or not that was really Anakin Skywalker or if that was just Ahsoka's mind, or who knows. We'll see how that goes. But apparently there is a trailer out there that suggests that, you know, that may not have been the end or may not have been the last of Anakin Skywalker, that we might actually have a few more scenes, or at least maybe one more scene before the show ends. I mean, if that's the case, I'll be a very happy person. But we'll see if that ever happens, if that ever comes to fruition or not. But if not, I think that, again, hopefully moving forward, we'll see the show really taking a deep turn in finishing up Ahsoka's arc, finishing up her journey to finding Thrawn as well as Sabine. And who knows, maybe they'll find Ezra in the process. So that's all I have to say about my second take on Ahsoka Episode 5. What are your thoughts with kind of what I've basically said this time around? Like, what are your thoughts about Hayden's performance, some of the details and visuals that we've seen so far, how they executed the characters, and as well as what this means for the dynamic between Ahsoka and Anakin? Do you think we're going to probably see more of Anakin later on in the last 3 episodes? Is there a chance that we might see him one more time? If so, what are your thoughts? Why do you think that's possible? Would you want to see a live action version of the Clone Wars? Because that's kind of been now the most requested thing from a lot of Star Wars folks. And if you have any other comments, please let me know in the comments down below, and make sure to like and subscribe.